or if you will continue playing. I think it's StarCraft they're playing up there or something like that.
Greetings and welcome. I am Joffrey, and today I'm joined by just Vector because I think that Darkest Light is playing StarCraft in the other channel. So yes, the bald one is dead. Oh my gosh, it's so over, Joff Bros. You may as well be saying. You all just saw me in the other stream. I'm still here. I know that one only lasted like 15 minutes, but I got it done. It was up. I did the stream. I
Also,
didn't
I
miss it.
don't know if you've had this in the past, but I wanted to comment on it. Based Hornet picture in your room poster.
What? 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 Hmm?
Hornet from Hollow Knight behind you.
No. Also, normally people talk, like look at the Hornet picture and are like, this funny picture about a game that doesn't exist, and I say, no, that's a Hollow Knight picture, you silly. Just ignore the fact. I mean, you probably can't see it very well, but just ignore the fact that she's in a field of white flowers, which is explicitly a reference to the trailers. Uh, that's very different.
I've I've gotten tired of Silk Song jokes after like how many years of them now? It's been at least three, if not more.
Oh, it's been so many. Did you know? Soul Song was announced before Elden Ring.
Oh Jesus!
It
I knew it
was.
was
It was
something like
announced like
that,
three
but
months before Elden Ring was, I think. All right, but
yeah. And both fandoms went crazy simultaneously, and then Elden Ring got what it wanted, and Silk Song still remains.
you be quiet, Armas. I this is not going to be a 10-minute stream. I've got half an hour. Now you sit down and listen to what we've got to say, motherfucker. Moving on from Silk Song, you bastard. All right. So today we're discussing how they've revised great powers and hegemons a bit because of feedback, which uh, is epic. Because, uh, as they're saying here, the whole reason that they are doing in these Tinto talks is because they want to get feedback to make sure that they don't do another Victoria 3. They're not going to say that's why they're doing it, but they have said that yeah, they need feedback just to make sure that they catch anything that's a glaring flaw. And apparently, people really, really,
I
really
would
didn't
more
like how they
compare
did
it
Grid
to
Powers.
Imperator than Victoria 3, but
The difference is that they fixed Imperator, and people like it even though it was abandoned. um,
yeah, fair enough.
but because if you think about it, like how the community treats Imperator versus Victoria, they treat Imperator like a lost friend. It's like, oh, gone too soon. But Victoria's like, I don't care. That's just like the difference between how the community views them. Because Imperator became
I'm
martyred,
more
basically.
speaking of the community. I know that there's a growing devoted Vic 3 fan base. It's a contentious game, I'll give you that. But it does seem to have its fans.
Yeah,
Whether
that's
they have
fair.
enough fans is a different matter, but it does have its fans.
There's a good chance that it is going to eventually become appreciated just like Imperator was over time. But in any case, they're trying to make sure that EU5 does not launch in a state like the last couple games have, except CK3, where people are like that guy's
Failure
strict.
child, or at least the not utter failure child.
Because I mean, even CK3 launched with people being like, there's all the like middle
Well, there was
aged
all the whining about how it doesn't have literally everything
uh-huh.
from CK2 baked into the base game. But outside of that, it was a pretty good launch, in my opinion.
It's all those bald those bald old men that play CK2 think it's the superior game because it has Chinese Western protectorate. Those people are silly. I am the superior bald man, and I understand that CK3 is good. hmm You don't think it's possible to fix Vic 3 without gutting everything? Mm. I think that it's an acceptable game now, and it could be made good in time with tweaks. But we shall see if that is ever done. But it is some people's cup of
Basically,
tea
my
already.
opinion on Vic 3 at this point is if you want like a completely different military system, you are never going to be happy with Vic 3.
That's
But
true.
so long as you're okay with the rest of it and are okay with the current military system, an evolution of it, what have you, then you will probably enjoy the game. So, but for some people, the military aspect is the number one aspect, and that's kind of a deal breaker since it's such a radical different system of debatable enjoyment. So,
Yeah. For me, because of how broken a lot of those systems, because less so because of the way that the system works, and more so that it's flawed. Because like I don't dislike the system. If it worked properly, I would rate the game I would put it at a 7 for me. Uh, but the problem with that is that Imperator is an 8. But the war system does not work. And a lot of systems. The point is, if every system in the game worked as intended. But sorry, we gotta actually get going. I don't have time to
yeah,
ramble
yeah.
about Vicky forever.
Vic 3 must go back in the box.
Yes, yes. To be taken out only for when I'm looking at the Ambiter mod's development of Victoria, and when I'm playing the mega campaign in like several months. All right. So today, country ranks. First of all, we've reworked it so that country is now more about the flavor and internal mechanics, moving away from the unlocking of powerful diplomatic actions like intervene and threaten war, so that they are for great powers instead. There's also some modifiers that more fit being a great power than a kingdom or empire in name, like the power projection that the rank gave. Now, I did skim through this earlier, and my initial reaction to reading that was, well, that's a shame. I actually kind of liked how becoming a more highly ranked country gave you more um gave you more power projection. And you can see a kingdom that doesn't have anything that affects that, but it does a lot of very interesting little things that um they're all things that I'd appreciate, but none of them are just like, oh, this is a game-changing modifier thing, because
The more incremental bonuses as the grandeur of your country increases, rather than locking mechanics based on country ranks, which I think was the right call.
yes, but they have locked some extra unique and powerful mechanics behind hegemonies, and that's the main bonus of them, which we'll get to in a second. But the point is, I love everything that I've read in this one. But I'll
Oh
continue
yeah,
along. Um,
basically correct changes across the board. There's a
mhm.
few places I kind of wish they'd gone even farther in radical changes, but I am pleased with everything I read in this dev diary.
So we've got things such as a great power score plus 100. We see great power scores earlier in how they're calculated, and 100 is a very significant addition. That is a very significant number. However, I imagine that being a county probably gives you nothing, and being a duchy probably gives you like 20, 50 points. So stacking. Um, but you can see can sign alliance, can guarantee, can support rebels. The thing we don't know yet is because these have a yes next to them, which implies that there's a government rank that cannot do this, which would surprise me. I'd be a little surprised. So it also confuses me. It can sign alliance. There's like can
Yeah, it
counts not
might
ally people?
be.
But
Yeah, I'm really interested to see because, as you say, if there's a yes, there's a no.
yeah, that's the implication at least.
And since it's tied to country rank, because my initial thought when I read this was, well, it might be tied to government types, perhaps, like a subject government type can't sign alliances and can't guarantee, can't support rebels, things like that. But no, this is the country rank that gives these effects, which every country has a country rank, to my understanding, unless there's
Hmm.
like a country rank 0, which is like for, a building based landless country, which can't guarantee things.
I but
Like
at the same
McDonald's
time,
cannot guarantee the territorial integrity of Russia. I don't know.
I bet that those countries can do a lot of that stuff. They can ally people, for example. Uh, they can have vassals,
Yeah,
but who
and that's
knows?
where I'm just not sure. So
Yeah.
I'm as curious as you are.
So, moving along to great powers, this is where they have moved the power projection prestige bonuses. I really like this idea because at first I was like, well, darn, because I liked it's like, oh, well, the higher your government rank is, the more just innate power projection you have from your authority. But instead, they've moved it to your great power position. So the higher ranked great power you are, the more scaling bonuses you have. You also get a negative 25 opinion of each other, and the bonuses scale towards being number one. So France is a great power at game start, and they get 2 power projection. They're number 5, so they get 2. They also get 0.02 prestige per month, as well as a couple other things, including the penalty of their court costs get higher. But the yuan, as the number one, gets an entire 10 power projection, which is huge. That basically means that that puts them at 2 government ranks, or two eras beyond anyone that is not a great power, because every era gives you a tech that you can choose to research. You don't even necessarily research it. Some people won't have it. Every era gives you a tech that gives you 5 power projection. So the yuan just, and whoever the number one great power is just super above. Is it possible that banks and those people without a central government are the ones that can't form alliances? But yeah, I am mad. Because yeah, that's the thing, Armos. Because they don't own land. But I imagine that you'll still have a government rank as a society of pops, because societies of pops have pop numbers, and the way that your government rank is calculated, not great power, your government rank is calculated based on your number of pops, which is how you get, for example, the great power Kingdom of France. France is only a kingdom; they don't have millions and millions of their primary culture. Um, which you theoretically need to become empire. But I don't know. China's going to be empire somehow anyway, because even though they're Mongolian as their primary culture, it's weird. But you like the granularity of the modifiers for the placement on great power lists? Yes, I also like. We will see that yes, the amount of great powers is now fluid, and it depends on how many countries are close to the number one power in the world. And there's always a minimum number of powers, though, and a maximum, which depends on the total number of countries in the world, which is very neat. I'm so curious how that's coded. I want to go and look through the code and see what the code is that says that that's going to be the case, because that sounds very interesting, the way that that calculation might be figured out. Of like,
I
oh, if
wouldn't be surprised if there's something in the background that's like every era add, +1 base great powers, and then it has some sort of dynamic thing where it looks
maybe.
at, you know, as there are fewer countries, as the world becomes more consolidated, then the numbers of great powers rise, because essentially my thought is the great powers are the preeminent powers of the day, kind of concert of Europe, Victorian mindset of these are the major players. They're competing for various interests and, shifting alliances, what have you, kind of the whole concert of Europe sort of idea.
Yeah,
And because you have that thing where great powers have an innate dislike for each other because they're essentially peer rivals,
yeah.
or they recognize each other as potential rivals. Um, so as the world becomes more centralized, so as the number of states goes down, that slowly bumps the number of great powers up in order to incentivize them to not form power blocks, but to start fighting. That's currently my gut instinct as to how that's going to work.
Well, to me, I don't think there's going to be any sort of system that goes, there's the eras are going along. I don't think there's going to be something where it's like every era they increase the number. What I think is going on is that I think they're covering that angle with the fact that they're saying that the more people that are close to number one, means more great powers. So if there's one, if there's a country like Yuan that absolutely dominates the great power scaling, um, which yeah, I think they show later. But like Yuan at game start is several times more powerful than the next ranked power. Um, so I don't
Yeah,
think so.
that
So that
makes
means that they've
sense.
got a
'Cause
lower percentage of great powers. But when Yuan falls apart, then that will most likely increase the amount of great powers that will be around because there's going to be more people that are close to whoever the replacement is. Uh,
Yeah, now that you mention that and kind of have framed that up, that makes a lot of sense to me because it's essentially the difference between essentially the multipolar world of like the consort of Europe, where you
mhm.
have, a certain amount of great powers, and kind of more of a Cold War or even modern era where, you have the superpowers, one
Yeah.
or two, which are just so much more powerful than anybody else that they can't even be considered peer powers.
Hmm.
They're at most allies of, whatever reason, but
But they
it's
will
the big boy
still.
table. So when there isn't an obvious number one, suddenly there's a whole bunch more contenders for the title of great. But when you've got the one at the top, whether that's Yuan, whether that's Pax Britannica, whether that's Rome, whether that's America, what have you, then the number of people who are recognized as great powers shrinks.
It's a
So
really great way of like, yeah, when you consider any time in history, it actually just makes sense it perfectly makes sense as a system because yeah, as you're saying, like the Cold War is a great example of like, oh, who's a great power? It's like, well, you've got two. There's two you think of when you're thinking of the Cold War era because there's two people that are like they're butting heads. They're around the same rank of power. Mind you, in EU5, they would add the next few. They'd probably add like three more just to make sure there's five. But that's the point of the system, and it's really neat. Um, very very flavorful to be like, yeah, well, if there's tons of people, if it's like all every region of Europe has a power and those powers are all relatively the same, then yeah, that's more options. But moving on to hegemonies before we waffle on for too long. Yes, there's a lot of text here, but the what this is getting at is that hegemonies are not unlocked. There is no unlocking of hegemonies anymore. You don't need. It's not something that's like, oh, later in the game, or you need to have a certain amount of tech. No, it's just something that as soon as the Age of Discovery happens, as soon as the colonial era begins, people will start being picked as the hegemonies or the hegemons.
and
Uh,
they are going to be picked. They are not going to is something thrust upon you by nature of what you are, rather
mm-hmm.
than something that you append to your list of titles. So, nobody, the British Empire did not proclaim to the world, I am the naval hegemon. No, they were the naval hegemon by the fact that the British Navy completely destroyed anybody else in both power and number. So it's like, a hegemon does not need to say that it is the hegemon, it just is.
It's very true. It's just obvious who it is, and everyone will know. And it's very along with said fact, being a hegemon is also something of a curse at times because it makes people like you less. Everyone gets like a -20 opinion. Yeah, yeah. Everyone gets a -20 opinion, and also 20
That's going to
additional aggressive
impact
expansion.
on AE, and that's going to suck.
And
And
that
the other
scales
thing,
because.
yes, because you can hold multiple hegemonies. So if you are the superpower who holds 3, 4, 5 hegemonies, that's something like -100 opinion plus 100% aggressive expansion impact. So yeah,
So if
nobody is going to like you.
it's a fantastic system where it means that if Yuan somehow survives the beginning of the game and they actually make it to the colonial era, they're gonna have all five hegemonies. That's not even a question. They just will, because obviously. except maybe the Diplo reputation one. We've got a couple new ones, and there's a chance they might only have the first three, and not the new ones they've added.
It might not have naval because the Yuan were not super heavy into naval stuff. So
That's
I could
fair.
see somebody knocking them off. But yeah, in terms of economic
And military, they would just
economic
be.
and military, I'd say they're almost assured to keep at least for a while.
They would eclipse
So
everyone. There would be no one that's even close, I would figure. But in any case, the point is that if you have a country like that that just is dominating the game in tons of fields, everyone's going to be scared of them. No one's going to want to deal with them. They're going to have a stacking negative opinion of everyone. And it's going to be really hard for them to do anything because even just 20 extra aggressive expansion is a lot. 20% is a lot. And having that get increased even more than that, probably not worth the bonuses you're getting at that point, unless you're going to be building tall. So
but the thing is, you can't avoid it.
they also
If
no
you're
longer
powerful, you will be the hegemon.
they've also there's no longer a case of like in EU4 you hold the hegemon and it's like, oh, you've got this scaling bonus of you've been the hegemon for this amount of time, and now it keeps becoming a more powerful bonus, giving you just even more scaling modifiers that benefit that specific archetype that you fit into.
Military hegemon is the best in EU4 because of
Yeah,
the siege bonus and the supply bonus and the province cost reduction bonus.
but well, here while you do have modifiers, this is one of the more rare situations where EU5 actually hands out modifier stacking to the player other than tech. Because tech is the main way that you actually just get increased modifiers in a U5. They're really trying to reel back on doing that, which is one of the things I think is going to make some people not like the game, because it's going to be more like Imperator Rome, where the only way that you get increased modifiers for shit is with tech. And you're like starting cultural heritage. So in this case, being the two techs you start with that are unique to you, and then the techs you unlock, and then it's like later game things like you become a hegemon. The economic hegemon gets reduced unit food consumption, which is it's a little odd. I don't know why it would be units, but I guess fine. I would have uh thought that this would be, for the economic hegemon, it would be like decreased pop food consumption, maybe, or maybe increased food production. But yeah, whatever. Uh, the flag, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think the flag looks good. I don't know what's wrong with the flag. I think
I
that the
think the issue is that it currently looks like it's waving. I'm assuming it's animated in the actual
yeah.
thing, whereas they have a static shot right now because it looks weird, captured in this kind of half wave to me at least.
Yes.
But I'm assuming it's animated.
They wave in Victoria, so it's almost assured that they wave in Vic or EU5. But this is the meat and potatoes of what being a hegemon does for you. Being a hegemon isn't all about you just getting even more stacking modifiers. Because modifiers. Just giving you a modifier is the lame man's resort when it comes to making a game. Instead, they give you more mechanics. They give you unique mechanics when you are a hegemon. And in this case, you get the ability to use the divert trade diplomatic action and the reduced paperwork government or minister action. But here you can see the only way that Yuan would lose the economic hegemon is if someone has, I think it's 10%. 10%. Yeah, you need to be 10% more powerful in that area than them over the end of a monthly tick. So someone would need to get 19K monthly income, which I don't think that since the number two power is the Sultanate of Delhi, who is similar to Yuan, going to be imploding. I don't really think that's gonna be happening anytime soon.
Somebody had a very interesting comment in this dev diary that I actually really agree with. I feel like they should split trade and tax slash production in terms of the hegemony. So you have like economic hegemon and trade hegemons. Because some place like the Netherlands was a trade hegemon in like the 1600s,
Hmm.
but they didn't have like massive domestic production and stuff like that. It was because of their mastery of trade that they were
Yeah.
so powerful, so wealthy. Um, Likewise, Yuan, I imagine, is more because of its domestic production, its domestic tax base, rather than because it has any trade superpower. Um, so I feel like that was a comment that I really agreed with.
That sounds
Um,
a lot more natural to me, yes. Because this feels, yeah, this feels like it's combining a couple of things together. I'm sure they could come up with a diplomatic interaction that would be fitting of a taxing dude. Probably something to do with subjugating people or
or
forcing them to
like
pay
market
certain people.
integration, where you can like force another country to like produce a certain type of good or something for you for your own market or something. I don't know.
Maybe something to do with building things in other people's countries, because we know because that's a thing you can do. So maybe you'd be able to just enforce the ability to just make a certain building in someone's country. I don't know, but there's plenty of ways they could come up with an interesting thing to do. But yeah, I think the idea of splitting off a trade hegemon and then it's like, well, the bonus that they get is like a better chance of yoinking better chance of yoinking someone's territory into your trade. I forget what the term is, but there's all sorts of names I don't understand for
Market
things like
centers.
uh, yoinking uh, trade zones. Hmm. Do so economic hegemon. Yes. But yes, the reduced paperwork thing increases the production efficiency in an entire area. Areas are the really big things, I think. I think that we're areas are the really large divisions of regions. I need to double check. Oh, feedback. Shit. Um, where provinces, areas. Yeah. So provinces are the things that are more like the size of an EU4 county that are combining a bunch of locations, and areas are the really large things like all of Thrace. So you get the economic hegemon, increase the production efficiency in a whole area. You can go with Thrace or northern Greece and just be like, yeah, that whole place now is getting better production efficiency without increasing the input requirements. The naval hegemons can force embargoes on people and use a naval focus action on an area, which increases the maritime growth and harbor stability harbor suitability in all ports, which is very tasty. That sounds like a very powerful, unique mechanic. That because harbor suitability is a fantastic thing to have. Will I look at the feedback later? Yes, but not today. That's for sure. Military hegemon for being the greatest military, 10% cheaper war score cost, which war score costs are already cheap. So having an extra 10%, you can basically just grab whatever you want, honestly. Um, Violate sovereignty diplomatic action is a very powerful and unique one because that is going to be the ability to just get a little do you get a aggressive expansion? I don't think so. No, that you don't get aggressive expansion for doing it, but the person you do it on will dislike you and get a CB. So you get to march your armies through someone's land and force them to let you have their food. But that person gets a CB to use on you, and you can use soldiers as a workforce, which will increase the construction speed in an entire area. Everything from roads to buildings, RGOs, things like as they say, barracks, forts, and iron mines to more effectively build up the war machine during times of peace. Cultural hegemon and diplomatic ones are the new ones, though, and they get, well, cultural hegemon bonus. It gets a 25% faster growth to cultural tradition, so the 25% increase to their defense against being culturally converted. I don't know how useful that would be for someone who's a hegemon, but I'll need to see more about how cultural conversion actually works, because I suspect there's going to be reasons that will be valuable. There's also the diplomatic action to force someone to change their court language, which will increase the power of your culture by forcing other people to speak your language, which sounds very interesting.
Shall speak the glorious English tongue.
Yes, I can't wait to invade China to force them to speak the Queen's English in their courts. The diplomatic hegemon, which is one of my favorites for sure.
That, the cultural hegemon gets the cabinet action
Oh.
to assimilate an entire area.
Yes, I did forget that.
That makes me interested because I just want to culturally assimilate everybody.
Of course.
The world should be one culture.
These two might be my favorites because, of course, I'm weird like that. So normally you can only assimilate an area or a province rather, which is just the smaller collection of locations. So Byzantion, which is just like the 4 locations around Byzantium itself, or Constantinople. But if you're the cultural hegemon, which you get by having the highest cultural influence. So you might see the Pope getting that, which is really funny. The Pope has a very good chance of being the cultural hegemon at Game Start. But well, and then speaking of which, the Pope would be able to go to Italy and just start culturally assimilating large swathes of it at once as if he's expanding. But more likely, that's going to go to... we know that there's going to be people outside of Europe who at Game Start are going to have the ability to make artists, so maybe it's one of those who has it to start with. So again, if you can imagine, start your assimilation of all of Thrace at the same time if you're conquering it as the Ottomans. Big assimilation. Seems the diplomatic interactions that hegemons have are not possible to be used in great powers, so no England changing the court language of China. Well, that all they need to... They just need to be the cultural hegemon to do that. I don't know, what do you mean? You can't use it as against someone who's a greater power than you. Yeah, if England's a greater power than China on the scale of great powers, then they can. Yeah. Force a non-greater power. It does not say non-great power, though that might be a typo. I suspect that it is just them saying that someone who's a lower ranked power than you. But that is going to be that for this week, or this one specifically. We'll talk about the next map of North America soon, TM. And as well as the feedback. I'll go and look at that again. But here you've got the great powers, and next week they're going to be talking about government reforms, which is going to be very tasty. I'm quite excited for that. But for now, I gotta dip because I need to be out the door in a couple minutes, so I'm gonna catch y'all later.
Joffrey, run!
See y'all next time as I run to work to sit down for 12 hours straight. It's fine, Eric. It's fine. I'll try to be back and stream more Imperator tomorrow, okay?